You get a text from a friend that just says, "Hey, are you free to talk?" And your stomach drops. You're already exhausted, not from anything you did today, but from the weight of knowing that this conversation is going to be about their feelings again. And a thought crosses your mind that you immediately feel guilty for having. I wish I could just not care. That thought is not selfishness. It's your brain telling you that you've been running without a boundary for so long that connection itself has started to feel overwhelming. Here's the problem. Most people hear the word boundaries and they picture a brick wall, cold, permanent, something designed to keep people out. And because that feels harsh, they avoid boundaries entirely and wonder why they're burning out in every relationship that they have. But that's not what a boundary is. And the gap between what you think boundaries are and what they actually are, that's where most of your emotional exhaustion lives. Let's get one thing straight. If the word boundaries makes you feel guilty, it's not because they're inherently bad. It's because you were taught that protecting yourself means rejecting people. Think about how most of us learn about boundaries, if we happen to learn about them at all. You watch someone in your life say yes to everything and slowly disappear into resentment. Or you watch someone say no harshly over and over again, burn bridges, and everyone calls them selfish. These were your two models, a doormat and a wall. No middle ground. And so your brain built a false equation. Boundary equals rejection. Protection equals isolation. So every time you felt the need for a boundary, your brain treated it like you were about to hurt someone. And the guilt shut you down before you could even speak. That habit has a name, emotional reasoning. Your brain treats a feeling as if it's a fact. You feel like you're being mean, so you conclude that you are being mean. And the boundary never gets set. That pattern unfortunately has a cost. Not setting a boundary doesn't protect the relationship. It just makes you the only one paying for it. You absorb the resentment, you absorb the exhaustion, you absorb the emotional labor of managing their reactions before you've even had a conversation. And over time, that turns into something worse than any awkward conversation ever could. It turns into quiet resentment that poisons the connection you were trying to protect. So if a boundary isn't a wall, what is it? A boundary is a fence with a gate, and the difference matters more than you think. A wall keeps everyone out forever. No access, no negotiation, no warmth. Walls are what you build after you've been hurt, and they feel safe, but they're also deeply lonely. That's not a boundary. That's a trauma response dressed up as self-protection. A fence with a gate says something completely different. It says, you can enter, but here are the rules for how you enter. You don't get to climb over the fence. You don't get to show up whenever you want, but the door is there and I'm the one who opens it. That shift from you can't come in to here's how you can come in changes everything about how boundaries feel to you and to the person receiving them. Because here's the thing nobody tells us. Most people don't actually mind your boundaries. What they mind is feeling rejected. And a wall communicates rejection. A fence with a gate communicates structure. One feels like punishment, the other feels like clarity. And clarity, it turns out, is the most loving thing that you can offer someone. Let me give you a concrete example. You have a friend who calls you late at night every night. The wall says, I can't handle this anymore, and you stop answering the phone. The friendship deteriorates over time. A fence with a gate says, hey, I care about you, but I can't take calls after 9 p.m. Can we talk tomorrow? You've protected both your peace and the connection. Same goal, completely different outcome. Now, when I say boundaries, you're probably thinking this means saying no to people. That is one way of setting a boundary, sure. But boundaries as we define them are far larger. The first type is an emotional boundary. This is the one you know. You stop absorbing other people's moods like a sponge. When your partner comes home in a bad mood, you don't immediately think, what did I do wrong? When your coworker unloads their stress on you, you don't carry it for the rest of the day. An emotional boundary is the line between their feelings and yours. and some people have never drawn that line. The second is time boundaries, and this one hides in plain sight. You might find yourself saying, I don't have much time for myself. But what you really mean is I gave that time to someone else before I had the chance to use it for myself. A time boundary is pre-deciding what your hours are for, before the invitation, before the request, before the guilt has a chance to determine that for you. Here's a quick exercise. Consider your last week. How much of your free time was actually spent doing what you wanted? And how much was spent accommodating other people's schedules, other people's last-minute needs, other people's emotional emergencies? If it was more of the latter, then you don't have a time boundary. You have a time leak. The third type is the one almost nobody talks about. Energy boundaries. Some people, some spaces, some conversations, they don't cross any obvious line. Nobody said anything wrong. Nothing technically happened, but you leave feeling depleted, hollow, like something was taken from you that you can't name. That is a violation of your energy boundary, and most of us don't notice it until we're already exhausted. Learning to notice that cost before you pay it, that's what an energy boundary is. It's not about cutting people off. It's about recognizing that this interaction costs me more than I can afford right now, and subsequently choosing to reserve your energy for yourself. So, you know what boundaries are. You know they're not walls. You know the three types, but knowing and doing are not the same thing, and most advice skips the hardest part. It isn't the conversation. It's believing you're allowed to have the conversation in the first place. Here's what I mean. Before you can tell someone, I can't take late night calls anymore, you have to believe that your need for rest is as valid as their need to vent. Before you can protect your time, you have to believe that your time has value equal to anybody else's. Before you can draw an emotional boundary, you have to believe that you're not a bad person for setting limits. That's the real work. And just set boundaries, the advice that everyone gives, skips that work entirely. It treats boundaries like a light switch when they're actually more like a muscle. You don't start at the gym lifting your body weight. You start small. You build. So here's a good way to start. This week, don't try to set a boundary with anyone in particular. Just start noticing. Notice when your body tightens around a request before your mouth says yes. Notice when you agree to something and then immediately regret it. Notice who consistently leaves you feeling drained instead of fulfilled. Your body already knows where your boundaries should be. It's been telling you for years. Through the tension in your shoulders when your family member calls, through the exhaustion that you feel after talking with that one friend, through the dread before that weekly obligation. You've just been overriding it. The boundary doesn't start with the conversation. It starts with you believing what your body's telling you. That you have a right to set limits, that your peace matters, that protecting yourself isn't a betrayal of anyone else. It's the foundation that makes genuine connection possible in the first place. A wall keeps everyone out, including the people you actually want close to you. A fence with a gate lets love in while keeping that exhaustion out. That's what boundaries are. Not armor, architecture. You can't have deep relationships without a self to bring to them. And you can't have a self to bring if you've given away every piece of yourself trying to manage how other people feel. Separate your guilt from the actual evidence. Ask yourself, did you actually do something wrong, or did you simply stop overextending? Those are not the same thing. Your brain will tell you they are, but don't believe it. If you're still watching, I'm glad you stayed till the end. I truly hope that you got something out of this video. If so, hit that like button, really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing. We're going to be discussing healthy boundaries all month long. I'm Chris Nackos, and I'll see you next time here on the Sea Glass Perspective.